usual, I'm Kristen Elliott, one of the dietitians here at the Food Bank, and this is episode number 14 of Quarantine Kitchen. So, good morning again. It is Tuesday. It feels like a Monday. No, we're good. We're good. It's working, so good. Yeah, it's cold and it feels like a Monday to me. So I've got some really warming apple recipes to share with you all. That one may be really familiar, and then one might be a little bit different, that will be a new way to maybe prepare apples in the future. So I wanted to sort of get away from the idea of apple used only in recipes that are going to be served sweet. So I'm sharing with you a cabbage and apple. It's kind of a stir fry. It's referred to as a braise because you cook it in liquid. So you're not actually browning the vegetables and the apples in the dish. You can brown them. We'll talk about that when we get to it. The other recipe that I've already got started here is a apple and cranberry boil. That's not a good word for it. It's kind of like a fried apples recipe like you might find at the local Cracker Barrel. But I made it a little bit healthier by using water as my liquid base, and then I threw in some dried cranberries. You can use raisins or plums or anything else that you have around. What I love about this recipe is you can serve it on top of anything. Ice cream, yogurt, oatmeal. Those are the top three. French toast, absolutely. Pancakes, you can use it on top of that because you have a little bit of a juice going on here from your apples and your cinnamon and the liquid that you choose to use. So it's very versatile, and it gives you the warming of apple pie without the crust that has all of that extra butter in it. So you can add a little bit of butter to your apples here to give you a little bit more of that fried apple sort of texture and mouthfeel that you might get from other recipes or a restaurant, and you can totally do that if you add just a little bit. So maybe like a tablespoon will be enough to just give you that mouthfeel. So this is a little bit more similar to apple pie, but a good and quick, easy way to sort of get that flavor without all of the sugar and extra fat. For a dish like this, you want to choose an apple that may be a little bit soft, or use a combination of apples that will give you two different textures. So some apples are going to be a little bit mealy textured on the inside, a little bit grainy, and they're going to be softer to bite. And some of them are going to give you more juice in the long run. So a combination of those two types of apples would be really good for this, because the softer apple is going to cook down and almost fall apart in a way, and then it's going to give you a lot of juice because it is breaking down a lot. And then a more firm, crisper apple is going to hold its texture a little bit better, and then you'll have the best of both consistencies with the juice and the texture. I went to the store and I bought some really beautiful apples, and I ended up buying two apples that belong to the same category. I got some Honeycrisp and some Fuji's. I think I did that because those are my two favorite types. And I do tend to eat apples raw for myself. So I lean towards those when I went to the store. So I would like to say that these ideas on the types of apples you use for types of recipes, you can take them as you need them, because you might have one particular apple available to you, and I don't want you to think you can't make something because it's not the right kind of apple. So always keep that in mind. Sometimes there's an apple that's ideal, and then sometimes you can use what apples you have on hand, so keep that in mind. Okay. So I want to get started on putting this braised cabbage recipe together, because it's going to take just a few minutes to come together. So I've already got my pan heated up here, That is always how you want to start, is with your pan hot first. The original recipe for my braised cabbage and apples called for garlic and caraway seeds and allspice, and I can picture how delicious all those flavors would be. It would kind of be like a rye bread flavor with the apples and cabbage, and I think that would be delicious. But those two things are extremely common across all pantries. So I wanted to try something a little bit different with the seasoning. So I'll tell you. What I'm going to do first is I am going to use butter today. I'm going to use 1 tablespoon of butter, and that's going to give us a like rounded out mouthfeel, and add some, I don't know how to explain it. You all know the difference between when cooking with butter and when not cooking with butter. So a little bit of butter here and there is not going to hurt anything. So I'm only using 1 tablespoon of butter. So if you were to divide that 1 tablespoon across the 6 or so servings that you're going to get from the whole dish, you're spreading it out a lot, and it's not going to be a ton. So keep that in mind. All right. So we just wanted to get the butter in here and nice and melted. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some fresh ginger. So this is one of my savory, spicy seasonings that I'm using instead of caraway and allspice. So I'm going to use some ginger. I'm going to go ahead and add that to my butter, and I'm going to give it a stir. I'm going to use the same spatula as my other apples. All right. So a little bit of butter. It smells a little bit nutty because of the butter. That's a flavor you're missing in this if you are not using caraway seeds. So the butter is going to help give you that flavor that the original recipe wanted. Okay. So butter, got some ginger here. Smells so good. That smells so good. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add my cabbage. So the recipe calls for a whole pound, 2 pounds of cabbage, and I wanted to break it down a little bit. So I'm only using half of a small cabbage to show you this recipe today. I'm going to add my red cabbage. Red cabbage is a beautiful color. You're going to get other antioxidants from it because it has a different color than just green. So it's a good idea to mix up the colors of your produce that you're eating. So you can definitely use green cabbage in this recipe. But the outcome is going to be this cool, like pinky purple color. And the apples are also going to get dyed because of the cabbage. All right. So we got our cabbage here mixed in with the butter and the ginger. I'm going to just let that sit for just a second and tell you about these apples. Okay. So for these apples, I sliced them really thin. Because the thinner, the smaller of your pieces are, the quicker your dish is going to cook. So I also sliced my cabbage really thin because I wanted it to be similar cooking time on that too. So I added the cabbage first because it's harder. It's a lot harder. It's going to take a little bit longer to cook. So that's why that is in there first. For the apples, I prepped them earlier, and I tried one of my like anti-browning tricks. There are several that you can use. Today I use water and lemon juice. So apples are going to turn brown as soon as the flesh hits the air, and that's just a chemical reaction. And it's going to happen whether you like it or not. So there are ways that you can avoid this by soaking them in some liquid or something like that to keep them from browning so much. So this time I use water and lemon juice, and they've been in there for probably close to an hour because I've been prepping. But you can soak them for around 5 or 10 minutes, and then once you take them out of the lemon juice, they should not brown for a while. According to America's Test Kitchen, the best way, the number one way to do it is to do a honey and water mixture. And I didn't have any honey, so I used lemon juice. Okay, so cabbage is looking good here, still purple. It will turn as soon as we add an acid to it. So I'm going to go ahead and strain out my apples from the water and my lemon juice. So some people prefer not to use lemon juice because it will add a little bit of a more tart flavor to the apples, but I'm not complaining because I really love those sour types of flavors. That's my style. So if you don't like that, you could stick to a honey combination, or if you just need them to not be brown until you throw them in your dish, just put them in water. That'll be enough for just a short period of time. If you want to hold them in your fridge, you want to try something that's a little bit more acidic, like lemon juice or maybe honey. Okay, so this looks good. This has already wilted down a good bit. So I'm going to go ahead and add my apples. So I used 1 apple here. So this is going to be pretty apple heavy, but I'm not complaining. Man, it's going to be delicious. Okay, so I've got my apples, my cabbage. So now, whenever you braise a recipe, you're basically cooking it in liquid. So you can braise meat in the oven and it should be sitting in liquid it's like you're steaming it and braising it at the same time. So my liquid today is apple juice. So we're talking all about the apples today. You can already see that the apples are starting to turn a little bit purple just from being in there for less than a minute. So I really like that outcome of this dish. So I'm going to add some apple juice. This is 1 juice box worth of apple juice, and it's around 3/4 of a cup. I don't need that much. So I'm just going to add some, and I'm going to see how it looks and just see how much liquid is in the bottom of the pan. So you want there to be like a 1/2 inch of liquid. I think I over-exaggerated there, a little bit less than 1/2 inch. But you've got to have enough in there for it to actually braise. Okay. Oh, it smells delicious. Okay. I'm going for it. That looks good. So you can see there's a little bit of standing liquid in there, but not too much. You're not boiling it. You're steaming it and braising it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my lid on here. I'm going to leave my temperature at its medium temperature for right now, and then I'm going to reduce it once it really starts to boil. Okay. Let's take a stir on our other apples. Those look good. So I took the lid off of these apples because I wanted that liquid to reduce down a little bit. When you keep the lid on there, you keep the steam inside of the pot, and then it's just going to stay there and be very liquidy. So depending on what you want to use them for, you might want a thicker liquid. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm just going to let it reduce a little bit. Actually, need to turn the heat up just a tiny bit so it will reduce. Cool. Okay, so I wanted to show you a couple of ways to cut apples. And as usual, this is not a hard and fast rule. You have plenty of options or ways that you may already be cutting your apples, and they are not wrong. But one way will be really helpful when you are on the go, you don't have time to cut your apple while you're at work, or you don't have a knife available, or you need a snack in the car. So this is a cool method that also sort of helps reduce the browning. So I've got my this is a Honey Crisp. Nope, this is a Fuji. The Fuji apples have a little bit more green on the top, and the Honey Crisp a little bit more yellow. So there you go. Now you know. Okay, so apple is already washed and ready, and then you're going to need a rubber band. It can be a hair tie if that's what you have. So I'm just gonna cut it down the middle. I like to use this little bridge method. I teach when I teach knife skills, using your one hand to hold it still, and then your knife is gonna come under the bridge and cut it in half. So that's our half apple. Then I'm gonna flip over the cut side down to the cutting board, and I'm just gonna cut it in a few wedges, but I'm gonna try to hold it together. Okay, we got 4 from that side. This one's a little bit bigger. I'm gonna do 5 on this side. Okay, so we've got our wedges on both sides. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the whole apple back together, and then I'm gonna put a rubber band around it. So if you just noticed that the flesh actually didn't hit the air almost at all, because I very quickly put the rubber band around it, and then that is going to help you transport your apple. Maybe it's going to go straight in your lunchbox, or you can toss it in a Tupperware or a little baggie and carry it in your bag with you, and then you'll have an apple ready and cut up for you whenever you're ready for a snack, and it won't be brown. It will be a little bit brown. I'm not going to say there will be 0 brown, but that is definitely false. This is not an all or nothing situation. Okay, so one method for quick snack and reducing browning. Okay, our other methods were water and lemon juice, water and honey for the browning. I also wanted to show you another way to cut your apple. And this way, I've actually had someone tell me that I was throwing away some of the apple when I did this before. So I'm going to show you. So this is my little experiment here for using the core of the apple after using this cutting method that I'm about to show you. And I'll tell you about this in just a minute. Okay, so have you ever seen an apple corer kitchen gadget? So it's got a circle in the middle, and then it has these cutting pieces off the sides of it, and you would just smash it down, and it takes out the core of the apple, and it cuts the rest of it into wedges. I personally don't think they work that well, and I'm not a big fan of one function kitchen gadgets. So that really is only good for apples. You might be able to use it on pears, but pears don't have the same type of core that an apple has. So it would just be for apples. So this is how I like to cut to get around the core. So this is my method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a square right around the core. Let's see. A good angle here. So I'm going to cut as close to the center, the core as I can. So that gave me a flat cut. I'm going to cut on this side, and this side. So you end up with this core. This is a solid core. And then you have a little bit of the core pieces here, but this is not the really tough, stringy part that is not fun whenever you're eating an apple. So this is your core. So technically there is some fruit still on this core, and that you can take this and you can nibble off all the fruit if you want to. That's what I do with mangoes. I take the big seed out of the middle and I just eat all the fruit off of it. So you can do that with your apple core. Or you can try this. So I added my 2 apple cores from earlier. I added some of our dried cranberries that we added to our cooking apples over here. And then since I was using ginger for our braise with the cabbage, I just cut off a couple little nubs of ginger and I smashed them and then added them to this jar. So what I'm hoping this does is this gives us like an interesting like holiday-ish flavored water. So I've never done this before. I've never used apples for this kind of thing. So we are going to see if it gives us some flavor. It smells like apples. And it smells a little bit like the ginger. The cranberries are gonna soak up all the liquid and plump back up. So you can like eat them and they would not be really chewy. It's gonna add a little bit of extra sugar to it just because of those dried fruit, but we're gonna see how it goes. This is something you can do with your course. Okay, so now we have all of the sides of our apple. And then from here, you can cut it however you like. So for these 2 recipes, I cut it in really thin slices. And I'm just like this. The more even they are in size, the quicker they're going to cook and the more evenly they will cook. So you could have little slices like this. You could take this little chunk and you can just cut it into pieces like this. And the same thing goes for the rest of the apple. If you like really thick wedges, just go ahead and make a couple of big wedges like that. That's good for like scooping peanut butter or whatever your choice of dip is with your apples. So that is just one way that I like to cut apples. Let's see how this is looking right here. That smells good. Ginger, cabbage, and apples and apple juice. So apples are, you can see them, yeah. So the apples are looking a little bit pink, but the really cool thing is that at the end when they're done, I'm gonna add some apple cider vinegar that's going to bring the flavors all together. And then whenever you add an acid to a very strongly colored vegetable like this cabbage, it's going to change the color. So it's gonna, it might actually look a little bit blue. We'll see what the outcome is. It's always like a surprise for me, depending on what else is included in the recipe. Sometimes it's pinky purple and sometimes it is blue. All right, so these apples look good over here. Okay. Well, that went really quick. Joy, do you have any questions yet so far? Oh, good.
Allison says, does it make enough for leftovers?
Yeah, there will be leftovers. There will be leftovers. If we have any food bank staffers here, we will be serving up some samples afterwards. So look out for your email and you can try our braised cabbage and apples and our cinnamon apples over here. That's a good question.
Melissa Furlock says, I can smell the apples from here.
Yes, you know you can smell it from here. It smells, even with my mask on earlier, I said, I smell that apple cinnamon. We haven't had anybody poke their heads like through the door to see what's going on so far. It is the season for apples and cinnamon. You can also cook this cinnamon apple recipe in a slow cooker. So you have to pay a little bit of attention to this once you take the lid off of it so it doesn't burn while you're reducing your liquid. But you can also cook this in a slow cooker and set it and leave it. So it's, I believe it's 4 hours on low and it's about 2.5 hours on high to make this apple dish in a slow cooker. So that would be really great to come home to if you have like a half day position that you're working, like come home in the afternoon and you have smells like apple cinnamon, or maybe you get up really early. Not me, not a morning person, but if you are, I know that you're out there, you could start it early in the morning and then maybe like wake the kids up to some apple cinnamon smells. Yeah, so, I mean, it's so easy to put together. As far as my camera is in the shot. So I wanted to also share that you don't have to shred your cabbage as thinly as I did and cut your apples as thinly as I did. The original recipe wanted you to cut it into like 2.5-inch pieces, but I like it to be really thin, especially cabbage. So I decided to just cut it all really thin, so also it would cook a little bit faster for the time that we have here. This is looking really good. So I'm going to take my lid off. So I can do the same thing that I'm doing with my other apples is like kind of reduce the liquid down a little bit. But like one thing that comes out of braising is gravy. So this may not, we'll call this sauce, but when you're braising meat, you're gonna get a beautiful meat juice that you can use as gravy. So that's what we're gonna get here. It's gonna be appley and gingery. All right, so juice for me. You could add some garlic to this. As I was thinking about it, I was thinking I could add some like Asian vinegar maybe like a teeny little splash of soy sauce. I'm gonna add a tiny little bit of salt at the end to sort of round out the more sweeter flavors that we add into this dish, and just a little bit of salt, like the smallest little sprinkle is gonna tie it all together. Okay, so it's actually apple season here in Georgia. If you are anywhere north of Atlanta, you're gonna run into an apple farm somewhere that's doing like a U-pick, or you might run into them at your local neighborhood farmers market. So some of those local apples you might not necessarily find as easily in your typical grocery store. But some of our stores are doing a really good job of pointing out which ones are from Georgia. So you could just be on the lookout. Some of those apples that we have here in Georgia are, most of them are not like very familiar names. And I'm saying this because I'm trying to remember some of them that aren't familiar ones. I know we do grow some Honeycrisp here in Georgia. And then there were some other really interesting names that I cannot remember because I told you it feels like Monday. I'm very honest with you guys. All right, this looks good. Oh, these look good. I'm gonna say that these apples are good. All right. So here is my apples or cranberries. And that one is done. Yeah, I'm just gonna slide this in. I'm actually just gonna dump them all on this one. That just looks like a big bowl of warm, like a warm hug. With the apples and the cinnamon. It smells so good. So as the same for the cabbage dish, you can cut your apples into larger wedges or into cubes like I showed you just a second ago. And that will take a little bit longer to cook. It will give you more texture in the end. So if you're looking for your apples to be cooked down and really soft, then and you have less time, cut them really thin and then they'll cook faster and softer. But if you've got more time on your hands and you want a little bit of more texture out of your apples, just cut them a little bit bigger, like in a cube or in a bigger wedge, and then you'll have more texture out of that. Let's see here. I did not tell you guys this, but I left the skin on these apples. You're going to get a really great benefit of fiber out of the skin and fiber from the flesh of the fruit. Both kinds of fiber that our bodies really benefit from. So leaving that skin is going to help you digest your apple just a little bit more slowly because of the extra boost of fiber. Okay, so apples are looking a little bit over here. I'm going to just give it a little bit of splash of apple cider vinegar. I'm not going to measure this, so I just want to add a splash. Just a little bit. And then we'll see if it changes to a blue. I really want it to be blue, but I don't think it will from just the original picture of the dish. But depending on the acid that you use, it will interact with the red color of the cabbage. And that's just fine. Okay. You smell that? And it smells delicious. All right. Put this away. Here's our apples and our cabbage. Really beautiful colors. And I'm gonna turn this off. We're gonna do a little taste. There's a bite here because of that. I'm very excited. Mm. Mm. Mhm. They're really good flavor combination. I'm really happy with how that turned out. And it is a little bit on the sweeter side of things, just a little because of the apple juice. And because apples are always going to bring that sweeter component. But the apple cider vinegar just cut through the sweet and brought it all together. The ginger is really good. Please make this. It's really tasty. And then also, I already know what this tastes like. I feel like I've made this so many times. Mm-mm.
It looks so good and it smells so good.
I'm looking forward to seeing how this turns out. It looks nice. It smells nice. I just don't know how long it needs to sit to actually get that apple flavor.
Oh, we have a comment from Althea. She says that Matsu apples are
That is one of the local ones too.
yeah.
Matsu.
More tart.
Yeah. I like to, the way that I categorize apples in my brain is by their color. And then like the dark red apples are gonna have a little bit more of the like mealy texture, the way Red Delicious does. They're not as sweet and tart. And then yellow are gonna be really soft and really sweet, and then green are gonna be like hard and tart. So I look at them more in terms of color. That's how I remember it, and it's not a hard fast rule for all of them because there definitely is a range just within the red apple category. Just always make sure your apples don't have any extra soft spots or bruises, and you want them to feel a little bit heavy for their size. That's with any produce that you pick. You want it to feel heavy for its size. So you're getting your money's worth out of it. Joy, you have a favorite apple?
I really like pink lady apples.
Pink lady?
Yeah. And I think the Matsu, I really like the more tart flavors.
Yeah.
A little peanut butter on there.
Yeah. I think I'm a little bit more on the sweet end of things, like the Honey Crisp and the Fijis. Those are the ones that I always go toward. Yeah. Well, if we don't have any more questions or anything, we're good to go. Thank you all for joining us today. We put out a survey to see what topic we were going to do today, and apples had the most checks on that box, so we decided to go with that. We may be talking about dark leafy greens on our next episode, and that's going to be the Tuesday of Christmas week. Yeah, so we're going to talk about dark leafy greens, and not just Southern style. We're going to bring in some new ideas. Nothing wrong with Southern style greens. I love them. We just need a little bit of variety. Yeah. All right, friends. Thank you for joining us today. As usual, you can find the recipes and any resources from this episode in the nutrition resource links and the caption of the video. Please let us know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or if there's something you really want to hear about through our cooking videos. All right, friends. Stay warm. It's not Monday. Remember that. Have a good day.